Hello, hello. I want to welcome all of you to another hour of some of the stuff that it's hard to find anywhere else except on this radio station and here in this Universal Consciousness show. So we try to entertain you, we try to educate you, open your mind up, stretch your mind, sometimes blow your mind away, and we'll try to do that today too. And for those of you that want to listen to this show again, there are some sources and websites and stuff in there that you may want to write down. My name is Augie, and I'm one of the hosts, and Diana, my co-host, is over in Germany. Are you there, Diana?
I'm here. Hello, everyone.
All right. And if you want to listen to this show again, then you can go to our websites and several other places where we archive it. You can try www.universal-consciousness-show.com. And we're also on Facebook under me and Consciousness Show page. And we'll post it a bunch of different places. And of course, we're also on Twitter and everywhere else where the station puts it, which is just about everywhere. And then help us spread this around, because who knows, somebody else might like it too. And today we have two wonderful guests for you going to join us. And the guests are Diana and me. We don't have another guest, so we're just going to talk about some of the stuff that hopefully you like to hear about. There's so much to talk about. What do you think, Diana? Where should we start with this?
Well,
it's just the two of us here, you know?
Yes. So I think we can start about talking about time. So what do you think? How you would define time, and what is time travel?
Yeah, that's a good place to start, because it's a subject that is not very well understood at all, because science, the mainstream science, really have no clue on these things to speak of. Quantum physics, they're starting to get a little bit of a clue. And I got some things written down here that I'd like to talk about. One of them is time travel, yes, and then also, what will the future be like for mankind and us? And if we got time at the end here, talk about maybe also UFOs and who are they and who's flying them. Also tapping the universal consciousness, I want to talk just a little bit about. And maybe also how science now says we can reverse the aging process, and there's starting to be a lot of people doing it, and it seems to work all right, including for the guy that I found over in China. He was 256 years old, so we'll talk about him too. And also, about a week ago, I ran into a guy here in Tucson. We got to talk and talk about religion, and he was a born-again Christian, and he wanted to talk about Jesus. And I want to talk about what he really looked like according to the old Roman records. And that's going to be interesting, because there are some records showing some of this. But time and time travel. Well, I tell you though, there is a lot of evidence for time travel. It's just that it's being ignored. So first of all, it'll help to understand what time is. But if some of the things that is going on out there that is not covered by the mainstream media really proves that there is something real to this. And I found a story that I'm going to tell you here. It's a short one, and it was written up in all over the Far East and in European news media and so on. It was about a tunnel in the, oh gosh, I don't speak Chinese, but I'm going to try this one. Guizhou province in China, where thousands of people are reporting that time dilations happens when they drive through this 400-meter long tunnel. 400 meters, that's about 1,200 feet. And most of the people going through, they are gaining about an hour, or just short of an hour. Now, mobile phones, they gain, and watches, they gain close to an hour, but it's not exactly an hour. Now, there was a Chinese journalist, he wrote for Guiyang Evening News, and he did an experiment where he drove back and forth through the tunnel 10 times. And in a matter of less than an hour, he gained 8 hours. And he reported on this. Now, there's two explanations to this, and one of them is the government's explanation, and one is mine. And with the government's explanation, there is that there is a phone transmitter, or they call it a phone transmitter, that's, you know, a cell tower, on one side of the tunnel, sending out an incorrect signal. And that puts the clocks back an hour, which it looks like you are gaining an hour close to. Later then, when they get further away from the station, some of them say that they come back to the regular time. And that sounds reasonable, that, you know, there's a cell tower goofing up, and, you know, they don't have their individual signals. They're just a transmitter. So it's got to be somewhere at its source where the change is done. So if it was just a cell tower, I can understand that. But there is a problem. These signals does not change mechanical clocks, and the mechanical clocks are also changing close to an hour. So how do they explain that? Well, they don't. They stay away from that explanation. Now, there could be magnetic disturbances or radium interference in the tunnel, but not all people going through the tunnel even have the same effect. So there is something goofy here. I personally think that there is something involved somewhere, either on both sides or inside the tunnel, that creates a portal where you are able to go through it, and you end up in a distorted timeline that you have created for yourself. So this is something that it needs further investigations, and I'm not so sure the government is going to do it. And if they do, they're not going to tell us. The Chinese are pretty much the same.
Why does it come?
Yeah.
Why does it come now? Is it something new, or it was always like that?
Oh, no, they're saying that it was a new tunnel. So it was a fairly, well, it's not a totally new tunnel, but there was a fairly recent tunnel, I think it said. And there is a recent phenomena since the tunnel was created. So there is something there that creates this time dilation. And I'm standing with my theory. And because if it was just the electronic clocks, yep, I think I would be totally with the government's explanation. But when the mechanical clocks are doing it, I'm not in their camp at all, because that shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
And then we have this other, that was in China also. They dug up an 800-year-old tomb, and they were filming it while they were digging it up. There were several cameras on it, filming it all the time they were digging it up, and they'd got the lid off the sarcophagus. And inside, they found this mummy that was 800 years old. And another thing was a small Swiss watch, all rusted up quite a bit, corroded, but it was a Swiss watch inside that sarcophagus. It's all on, in fact, you can Google this and you will find it. And it's a phenomenal explanation. There were no chance, because of the filming of the several different cameras, that this could have been faked. What does that sound like, Diana?
Wow. I would like to know the explanation.
Yeah. And a while ago, there's one more story that kind of speaks to this. Do you remember that guy that showed up at the airport in Tokyo?
Yes, it was around, I think, middle of 70 years. And he showed up there. He was a Caucasian type, normally dressed. And as he checked in, he had a passport from a country that doesn't exist in our time. And of course, the authorities from the airport was alerted, and they interrogated him for a very long time, 2 hours. And he was getting very nervous, and he said that he always come to Tokyo, and he's regularly there because of the business, and he belongs to a country that should exist around 1,000 years. And he was speaking a language that, according to his knowledge, everybody can speak this language on the earth. And of course, they checked his passport, and he had the stamps from the Tokyo airport and also from other countries. And also he was in possess from some money that doesn't exist in our time. And so he was brought in a hotel near the airport, and with guardians. And within 9 hours, so when the morning came, he was not inside anymore, even though he was survived the whole night. He was actually vanished with his luggage and everything, and nobody see him again, and they never discovered what that was. So what do you think that was?
Yeah, and I guess also they had a guard at the door. And he was not on the ground floor. He was way up in the 8th or the 9th floor. So he couldn't go anywhere. I explained that one. Now, I don't know if you should call that time travel, but we should maybe call it time slippage. Maybe there was a different timeline where he was, that he kind of slipped into this one. Things went wrong, and then he stayed here for a while, and then he just slipped back again. I'm hoping that's the way it happened.
Yeah.
But time travel, as the concept said, there is a lot of evidence out there. One of them is also this panel that they found in Abydos, Egypt. It's a panel on the wall that was carved in there some 7,000 years ago when they first created that palace, I guess what it was. It shows helicopters in that panel that was carved into the stone. So there's another one. And if you go to my website, and I'll give you the web address again, you can see evidence of photographic evidence that I did. And it shows, go to page 8 in the photo gallery, and you will find 2 pictures. They are basically taken at the same time, but they are totally different. In one of them it's raining and the other one is not, and they're different. You'll see when you get there, you can show that. Go to www.universal-consciousness-show.com. And these 2 pictures, they're kind of unique. They were taken about 10 years ago, and I've been sitting on them. I just didn't know what to do with it because I didn't figure a lot of people would believe it anyway, but now I really don't care. What you think of it is absolutely irrelevant. There it is. This is what happened. And if anybody knows me, they know that I'm not smart enough to do any kind of fakery on that one. I am ranking right up there with a village idiot when it comes to the computer. So there it is. And also in 2003, BBC television came over to the United States to do a TV documentary on time travel. They interviewed several theoretical physicists, Michio Kaku and Green, and a couple of other people, and myself. And on that TV documentary, I demonstrate a small electronic device that I have that I've had some very strange experiences with. And when it comes to the experiences that I have, I talk about this in my book. Time travel, I cover that in my book very well, as much as I dared to at the time. But it's very interesting reading. And what I talk about on the TV documentary, not all of that happened. And I have learned a lot more since then. I wasn't quite having the right understanding about timelines back then. I thought more or less that what happens, it is in our timeline, and I did not understand the multitude of them. But what happened is that back then I was hosting and producing 2 TV shows in Tucson, and we were all about government conspiracy. Government this, government does all these things to us, and the corporate world is all corrupt. And yeah, of course it is, but that's where my head was. And that's the kind of things that I created in my reality at the time, in the timeline I was at the time. So if I had stayed in that timeline and continue in those kinds of environment of thinking, those things that I talk about probably would have happened. Some of them were not very good. And I changed my way of thinking because of things that happened afterwards. I had time to meditate. I had time to go within and seek out the lighter side of the universe, tap into the universe. And from doing that, I changed my timeline. I am not in that timeline at all anymore. I've created a new timeline where I have designed everything going into the future the way I want it to happen. And good things are happening in this timeline. So now it's going to be different than it was what I've talked about on the TV documentary. But it is a very interesting, you can see the device that I'm demonstrating there. You can probably find it on the internet under the title. It's called Time Trip. I haven't searched for it for a while, but I'm sure it's out there. At least if you go to BBC Television, you can find it on their website. It's called Time Trip. And when we talk about time travel also, wouldn't it be fun to do it? Well, in the back of the book, I explain a method that is workable. And people are doing this and they're having some experiences with it. And I can speak to that because I have done that. So in the back of the book, you can read about time travel and basically how to do it, but don't sit down and try it 3 times and say, oh, that didn't work. No, stay with it, practice it. And it could take you a little bit. For all I know, it could take you a month before you can, every day until you start having some experiences. But stay with it. If you are interested enough in it, stay with it and let me know what you experience. And this is what I talk about in the... Yeah, go ahead.
By the way, talking about your book, Aggie, because I never had the chance to ask you in a radio show, so I will take the chance now. Can you tell us, how did you get the information that you wrote about in your book? What did it happen to you?
Okay, here we go again. The information and the stuff written about in this book, spiritual science, higher conscious thinking, and how to access the universal consciousness. It is a conglomerate of my research of things that I have found, and also a universal download that I had in a meditation. And these, I call them downloads. That's when the universe dump its information into your mind, and you have it. It's sitting in your mind with concept and detail of full understanding. And this is not unique to me. It has happened to a lot of people. Very few people talk about it. Nikola Tesla is one that talked about it, and he said that I could see the past, present, and the future at the same time. That's how it works. You dump the past and the present and the future into your brain. The mind dumps it into the brain, so now you can transfer it up to conscious understanding. And this is something that it's a very emotional and a very traumatic experience when you see all this flashing in front of you. It could take anything from a few seconds to maybe 10 seconds, and it's over. And then it sits there in this soup of creation, and you're looking at it like it's 360 degrees around you. You can see things to the side, behind you, in front of you. It is all boiling in this conceptual soup of creation. And you can think of something and that thing pops out of there and you can see it working. Like, let's say, the free energy device, which I saw several of. And it pops out and you see it working. Because the things that you're more interested in and the things that you are thinking about pops out of the soup, and then you can see it. So this is what happened. I was sitting in meditation and probably being gone for about 20, 30 minutes, just basically thinking about nothing, open for the universe to tell me something. And it did. I started seeing flashes of light around me. When it started focusing in front of me, and then it became a ball of light that expands and cover me all around me. And then I had this flash of information, knowledge, and it came fairly quick. It was more than a couple of seconds, but it could be as much as 10 seconds. I'm not really sure. And then it was over. No more feeding of new information. It was sitting there. And I don't know if there was the whole universal knowledge that came, but the things that I was interested in, that was there. And whenever I think about other things later, I can go back to it and pull it up. So it may have come there, or maybe there is a channel opened up where I can get other outside things later. It's hard to say. But this was well, it just totally blew me away. And when I opened my eyes up, I could still see some of it, and then it faded, but it stayed in memory. And I was sitting there thinking about what in the world was that? And the more I thought about it over the next few minutes or so, I can't talk to anybody about this. They're going to think I'm nuts. And I didn't for several days. And then I talked to another man there, that very well-educated man. He was pretty sharp. And I told him what had happened. And he looked at me like, well, that makes perfect sense to me. Other people have had stuff like that, he said. So if you want to know more about it, start reading quantum physics. And he told me a book. And go to the library or get the book, he says, and read it, because they talk about these things in there. And I did, and I read the book, and then I got hungry. There were more books on this, and I started reading that, and I realized that I can talk about this because I can back up some of what I saw with science. And that's what I'm trying to do in the book also, trying to explain the science behind what I saw. The science does not go far enough, especially when it comes to the interaction with the mind. Because what I try to do in the book is to teach people how to use the mind in ways that they have never been able to do before, because they have never been taught how to do it. If you're not taught how to use something, it's really hard to figure it out. I bet you can have some parallels in your own thinking on that. Starting to drive a car, for instance, especially if you had a gear shift, somebody had to show you how to do that. Flying an airplane, you don't just crawl in it and start flying. You got to have some lessons. Somebody's got to show you. Same thing with the mind. If you're not shown how to use the mind, which none of us hardly are, how can you use it to the full potential? And this is what I do in the book. I show you how to do some of the things that other people just dream about or heard about, like astral travel for one thing. I covered that a little bit in there, and there are some tricks that you could do. I have run into people that has meditated for 20 years and they still don't know how to empty the mind out. Well, in the book, I show you two simple methods. One of them works 100% of the time, and the other one probably about 98. One of them is so quick that you can learn it in about 11 seconds. If you squeeze it, you get it down to 9. And that is just sit down, close your eyes, cross your eyes a little bit, and all thoughts go away. And it works every time. Now, there are tricks like that with astral travel. And I talk about this. So learn how to use your mind, and the really fun part is in the back of the book, where you can learn how to do a little time travel. So I don't know. I don't know, Diana. How did I get with this one? Did it explain some of it?
Yes, of course, because I also read your book 2 times, and it was a lot of knowledge inside. I was very impressed because before I read your book, I studied all this stuff about 10 or 15 years. So if I could read your book before this 10 or 15 years, I could spare this whole time of researches and tons of books and documentaries, and I could find everything in your book squeezed. So that's why I was asking myself, where did he get so much knowledge?
Well, it wasn't mine. Some of it was given to me, so I learned from people and things too, and we all do.
Yeah. But do you think that could it be possible that somewhere in this universe or in other universes there is a duplicate from me and you and other people living in a parallel universe? And is it possible to slip to another dimension through kind of shortcuts, or is it possible to communicate with the beings living out there, or contact another me living in a parallel world?
I will almost guarantee you have a double somewhere. And I've heard people say that they think they have run into people looking exactly like themselves here in their own country. So if you look at 1 trillion planets, Earth-like planets out there, I'll guarantee you have one somewhere that it looks like you, acts like you, think like you. Oh yeah, I bet they're out there. They've got to be out there. I'd love to meet my double.
Okay.
Yeah. And the thing is that when we start thinking outside of the box like this, it opens up the mind and it invites the things on the outside of our brain, which is in the mind, the universal mind. It invites it in and things come to us. But I think the gate to higher consciousness comes through meditation for most people. And if we are not meditating, it could be several reasons for that. One of them is religious dogma. I hear Christians say, "Oh, you cannot meditate because then you are dealing with Satan. Satan is coming to you. He's going to get you." Well, yeah, okay. Well, first of all, I know when Satan was created, he was created in 325 as a boogeyman to scare the people into compliance and give the Roman Empire their money. But on the other hand, is that we create what we think about. If we think about things like that, then we allow for those thoughts to come in and manifest themselves and create things. So we should be guarding our mind. Make sure we allow good things only to fester in our mind. And now I see that we're at the bottom of the hour, so we got to take a commercial break here to pay some bills. We will be gone probably 3 to 4 minutes, all depending on how many bills has to be paid, I suppose. But it could be 4 minutes, so we'll be back.
Okay.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
To the believer, the evidence is overwhelming.
To the skeptic, there will never be enough.
Hello, everyone. This is Kevin Malik.
And this is Jennifer Celsi Malik.
And we're your hosts, Paraversal Universe, live every Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Grand Meridian in the UK.
And Saturday mornings in Australia, here on the Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network.
We invite you to join us as we check out the mysteries found within the 8 categories of the unknown and unexplained.
Join us as we interview the top minds in the perspective fields as they share theories and information regarding these unsolved mysteries.
Brought to you by the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society Limited.
So for excellent talk radio, check out Paraversal Universe, where all paranormal perspectives apply, Fridays on LNM.
Ben Franklin said, if you do the same thing tomorrow as you did today, you're going to get the same tomorrow as you got today. Changing the world starts with you, and changing you starts with changing the way you think. Late Night in the Midlands can help. Listen to all of our shows at latenightinthemidlands.com, because things really do need to change.
You can listen to the LNM Radio Network 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through the Paranormal Radio app. Available from LNMRadioNetwork.com or TalkStreamLive.com on both Android and Apple. Our call to listen line is open 24/7. Dial 701-719-9704 so you can listen on the go.
The LNM Radio Network and Late Night in the Midlands depends on you, the listener. Without you, there would be no us. So help us continue to bring you the best guests with the best information, and subscribe today. Information on becoming an LNM subscriber can be found at the top of latenightinthemidlands.com. Just click the About Subscriptions tab and become part of the family while helping the truth stay alive. And while you're at it, maybe subscriptions aren't for you. A one-time donation helps as well. Click that donate button on the right side of latenightinthemidlands.com and help us help you.
To hide the truth once you know it makes you think that you are better than everyone else. It makes you into the type of person who says, "Ooh, I have a secret," but you're not ready to hear it yet. However, for $39.95, I'll let you in on the secret. You'll lead the people to the promised land for the cheap price of 3 easy payments of 1/3 of their soul apiece.
Hello, hello. We are back with the Universal Consciousness Show, and it is just Diane and me here today. We're talking about all kinds of goofy stuff, and we have been talking before the break about time travel. And there were one more thing that I have thought that we were going to talk about UFOs. Where are they from and who are flying them? And that also somewhat ties into time travel because not all of them are coming from other star systems, other galaxies, or other planets. There are also interdimensional things that is coming. And we see that because if you go to YouTube and you can go see on the internet, you find videos of ships that is flying, and suddenly you have a flash of light and they go away. There is nothing there anymore. That is when they accelerate the vibration inside of a plasma bubble and they change vibration and reality, parallel universe if you like. So there are parallel universes they come from, and of course where they come from, our moon is an observation station for they are observing Earth and the critters that live here, and I'm including us in that, what they are concerned. There is a book that came out of KGB in Russia where they're saying there's at least 160 known foreign extraterrestrial entities, different types of them that is coming here visiting from time to time. And they're probably right about that. There's a lot of them. The little grays, they are very common. They are kind of like the worker bees. They are doing the work for the higher, more powerful entities. So when we're talking about UFOs, they're coming from everywhere. And who is flying them? Everybody out there. And we have, of course, also created a breakaway society that was built by the $12+ trillion missing from the military budget in the United States. They have built this breakaway society and the secret space program with bases on the moon, on Mars, and there are now whistleblowers coming out talking about this, and yes, they are there. We have seen them. In fact, I've seen the pictures. So they're there. And those are also flying in our sky. The triangular ones with the light in each corner, that's one of ours. So there are many different types of them. The huge one that is, 20, 30 miles long, that's not ours. That's somebody else's. And here's for you, if you want to see UFOs or see foreign or even entities, get your hands on a fourth generation night vision goggles. These goggles are able to see higher up into the light spectrum than your eyes can do. So when you take those, go outside, point them into the sky, you're going to see things flying around. You see triangles, you see round flying discs, you see cigars, you see points of light moving in space. You will see this. And if you aim it down into the countryside, very often you will see animals, and you take the goggles off real quick, the animals are no longer there. If you are really adventurous, and if you have a lot of guts, take one of these night vision goggles, the fourth generation, with you and go to a graveyard and sit there for a while. Chances are you won't be sitting there very long. And that's all the hint you need. So if you can get your hands on one of those, have fun with it.
But Agi, do you think that among these UFOs and these extraterrestrial beings, could it be some future us that they are trying to contact us?
Yes, I've seen this this alien that looks like a kind of like a tall gray, he sits there and he says, "I am you from the future," and he explained that he came back.
Yeah.
I don't buy that. There
Why?
are so many different races. If we came back, we would look somewhat similar to us and not somewhat similar to something that is already here and around us and all infested on the moon and everywhere. That's a different race. And races develop over time, over the millennia. But look at humans. We have human skeletons that is found with head skulls like us that have been found, and they are millions of years old. Footprints that looks just like us, that is 30 million years old. So we've been here a long time. And that guy sitting there in that chair saying he is us, I do not buy it. But there are extraterrestrials coming back in time here to observe and possibly help. But not that guy. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. So we were talking a little bit about also before tapping into the universal consciousness through meditation. So if you are not meditating now, start doing it. And if your religion tells you not to do it, I want you to look something up. Even in the Bible, it says, be still. They don't talk about you sitting still and not moving your hands and your leg. They're talking about your mind being still. That is what happens in meditation. Actually, what it says, be still and know I am your God. Meditate on that phrase, and the universe will come to you. Just do that, and you're going to have some interesting experiences. Another thing that is very much on my mind a lot of times is reversing the aging process. I know people have heard me talk about this before, but it needs repeating because it's so important to people. It'll help keep you healthy and also becoming younger. Science now know what causes aging and death. It is the shortening of the telomeres at the end of the chromosomes. When the telomeres get so short, they are no longer able to hold the chromosomes together, and the end of the chromosomes start fraying so that the cells are no longer able to replicate themselves. Then you get stuck with old cells in the body, and the more old cells you have, the older you get, and you got enough of them, they take over and you die. Now, there is a way to stop this process. In 2009, 3 doctors were given the Nobel Prize for discovering an enzyme that reverses the aging process. And nobody knows about it. Well, I write about it in my book. So if you want to know more about how to do that and what I'm taking, and I'm doing this process and it works for me. And of course, also interaction with that, with your mind, that is very important. I found a guy in China that the government verified his age. And the New York Times wrote an article on him back in the 1930s. And they found this guy, and he was 256 years old. He was a martial art expert. He was a herbalist, and he taught martial arts to the army in China all the way up to just the day he died from an accident. He didn't die from old age. I've seen pictures of him. And yeah, he looks old, but he doesn't look a day over 70. So there's something to this, and that's what I'm doing. You get your hands on the book Spiritual Science, Higher Conscious Thinking, and How to Access the Universal Consciousness, and you can read more about that. I I've talked about this on some of the other radio shows also, so you can just research it on your own, and you can see what I'm doing. And I'm doing the same thing as I researched this 256-year-old man, and I found out what he did, and that's what I'm doing, and maybe that's why it's working for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How old do you want to be, Diana?
Oh, well, if I cannot manage that to 250 years, then you have to find somebody else for the radio show.
Yeah. So you said 250 years old. Okay. So when you are 249 and a half, don't you think you would rethink this number?
Well, if I don't have to have a job in accounting so long, then it works.
Yeah, there you go. And that's the thing. Think back on it. Living forever, that's not for everybody. Because if you're been at your job for 9 years and you're bored stiff already, how could you handle another 275,000 years? You cannot even comprehend thinking like that. You get involved in projects, you go on a mission, you do things good for mankind, and you have other important things in life. Chances are you get so bored with it that you're done and you want to get out of here too. So this is not for everybody. And we'll just play with it as long as we think it's fun, and then we'll say, okay, I'm done.
But we have not so much time, so I would like that you talk about Jesus and what you say.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a very, very limited time for Jesus, but
well, yeah,
try.
that's true. I've researched that guy more than probably most people, and I found some really interesting things, and I write about that in the book too. And chances are that he was a totally different guy than what we are led to believe. And we are led to that he was a totally spiritual man, a pacifist that would not kill or harm anything. Well, that's not what the surviving Roman records says. And they talk about that actually in the Bible too. They speak of him saying, if you have 2 coats, sell one and buy a sword. Why would a pacifist say that? And the thing is that the surviving Roman records speak very little of him, but they speak some. And there are people writing books out there saying Jesus never existed. Well, we know enough about him that we know that he did exist. And of course, in Nicaea, or in Constantinople, Turkey these days, they created the Christian religion. Jesus was not a Christian. He went to India, and there is evidence of that. There is writings in India saying that, yes, he was there. And he came back, and he was a Buddhist. That's why he said that women are equal to men. They can also teach the word of God. So that didn't go over too well with the Jews. And see, Jesus was never a Christian. So he was a phenomenal man, and he did teach love to the people, love to everybody except for the Roman soldiers. He had no passion for them. So how do we know that? Well, yeah, we know, in fact, a lot of things about him, besides what it says in the Bible. There are books out there that say he never existed, but he did. But we know very little about him, actually, if we go to the official records. What we're finding, though, is that there is, he was running around Judea, and he was speaking against the Romans and the Roman government and the soldiers. He wanted the Jews to take up arms and drive the Romans out of Judea. And when the Romans found that out, they got really pissed. and they wanted him arrested, and they wanted him prosecuted for political agitation, which had the death penalty at the time. And what happened is that they wrote up a wanted poster, and a few copies of the wanted poster has survived. So what does it say on the wanted poster? Well, that's the good one, because what shows there is that he was he was known as 3 different names. Wow. One of them was Joshua bin Joseph. Well, that's Joshua, that made sense, that was his name. And then bin Joseph, that means son of Joseph. But also he had 2 other names, and I speak about this in my book actually very extensively, and I see we're kind of running out of time here. But what it says on the wanted poster is that he was short and he was bald. He had no hair. And also that he walked hunched over. Now, I know this flies totally against what makes sense. And I totally agree with that, because I believe that the Romans came to the Jews and said, what does he look like? And somebody they talked to wanted to protect him. So they gave the Romans the wrong description. Because on the wanted poster, there's a drawing of a man looking kind of like that, and also his 3 names are listed. Now, there is another record of what he looks like, and that comes out of the Dead Sea Scroll, the Qumran scrolls. And what they talk about there is that he looked totally different. There's a book out there that says that did Jesus live 100 years before the year 0? Well, there is a man that lived 100 years before, and he taught love. He rose the people from the dead. He walked on water, and he did all the things that Jesus is supposed to have been doing. But it was 100 years BC. Now, the man that they talk about later, written in about the year 50 or so, when that part of the Dead Sea Scrolls was written, they talk about Joshua Beth Halachme, which was Jesus's Hebrew name. And they talk about him being tall. And they didn't have the description of colors down as we do. So they used, excuse me, had to clear my throat there. They talk about him being tall. His eyes was as the midday sky, and his hair as the ripe grain of the field. So that sounds like he had blue eyes, and he had the grain they talk about was wheat, of course. That's what the Romans, and they grew in that area a lot of. So that means his hair was yellow, and he was strong. He was tall. That is what it said in the Qumran scrolls that was written by the Essenes that Joshua Beth Halachme was a part of. So this makes you think. And I guess we have to leave you thinking on that because we're out of time. And if you want to know more about him and all the rest of it, go and get your hands on the book Spiritual Science, Higher Conscious Thinking, and How to Access the Universal Consciousness. Amazon is the best way. They're quicker. And besides that, we are going to be back next week. And we're going to have a wonderful guest next week. And I guess you're going to have to wait and see and listen to that too. It's going to be Dr. Patrick Vickers. He runs the Gerson Clinic that has almost 100% track record of curing cancer. We're going to talk about the medical system, how it works, and the cover-up behind it. So this one's going to be interesting. Spread the words on that one. So next week we will see you again. So until then, take care of each other. Bye-bye.